Nikolai Dzhumagaliev, known as Metal Fang and Kolya the Maneater, is a Soviet serial killer and cannibal who murders and cannibalizes 10 victims from 1979 to 1991. Deemed not guilty by reason of insanity, clearly, he's admitted to a psychiatric hospital. Years later, during transport to yet another facility, he escapes and is on the run for nearly 2 years, during which time he murders again and is only recaptured because he wants to be. Okay, hi there, my name's Misha. Welcome to All Things True Crime, or welcome back if you are a regular. If you enjoy this video, please take a minute to like it, share it, comment, and subscribe to my channel so you won't miss my next video. And then ding the bell, that way you'll get notified the next time I upload. That's All Things True Crime. It's truly chilling. Quote, I always loved to hunt, and often went hunting, but this was my first time hunting a woman. When I went out on the Uzunganash, my black train tracks, I saw some young peasant woman. She was alone. I felt my heart pound within me, and I ran after her. Hearing my footsteps, she turned around, but I caught up with her and put my arm around her neck and dragged her to the side of the landfill. She resisted, but I cut her throat with a knife. Then I drank her blood. At this point, from the village appeared a factory bus. I lay down on the ground and crouched next to the body. While I was lying there, my hands grew cold. After the bus drove past, I warmed my hands on the woman's body, then stripped her naked. I cut the corpse's breasts into strips, removed the ovaries, and separated the pelvis and hips. I then put these pieces into a backpack and carried them home. I melted the fat to fry with, and some parts I pickled. Once I put the parts through a meat grinder and made dumplings. I saved the meat for myself. I never served it to anyone else. Twice I grilled parts, the heart and the kidneys. Grilled meat too, but it was tough, and I had to cook it for a long time in its own fat. The meat of this woman took me a month to eat. The first time I ate human flesh, I had to force myself, but then I got used to it. Okay, there's a lot to unpack there. Nikolai is born November 15th, 1952, in Uzunganash, Kazakh, SSR, Soviet Union. I'm sure I'm butchering these names. My apologies. His father is Kazakh, which is a Turkish ethnic group, who mainly inhabit the Ural Mountains along with northern Central Asia and East Asia. His mother is Belarusian, which is an East Slavic ethnic group native to Belarus. He is the third of 4 children and the only son. He completes the 9th grade before joining railway school. After he graduates, he is assigned to work in Atyrau, which is a city in Kazakhstan. In 1970, at 18 years old, he is enlisted into the Soviet Army, and he ends up serving in Samarkand, Uzbek SSR in chemical defense. A few years later, he completes his service and attempts to transition into bus driving. When he fails at that, not sure how you fail at learning how to drive a bus, but he does, and then he enrolls in college. Smart move, but he also fails there. I don't know what happens, but it just doesn't work out. It's at this point he travels to the Soviet Union and enjoys seeing sights, such as the Ural Mountains, Siberia, and Murmansk. It's in these various locations that he tries his hand at a few different professions, such as a bulldoze operator, a sailor, an electrician, and a forester, which is someone who drives a forestry vehicle that carries big logs and stacks them. Sounds like he has no clue what he wants to do for a living. Or maybe he isn't motivated to work, or doesn't find whatever it is he's looking for in work. In 1977, he returns to Uzunganash, Kazakhstan, where he attempts to be a firefighter. Random fact, 1977 is the same year he contracts syphilis and trichomoniasis. These are both STDs. Had never heard of trach before. Okay. Sometime between 1977 and 1979, he begins planning his first murder very carefully and meticulously. In January of 1979, it's time for his big plan to be executed. He murders a peasant woman who is traveling along a rural path outside of Uzunganash. She is walking along the Uzanganash Mybalak. He waits for her to pass him. His heart is pounding so intensely that he lets her get further ahead of him than he planned. He runs after her as he feels himself losing the opportunity to strike. Once he catches her, he puts her in a headlock and drags her to a landfill. She resists a fair amount, though, but he is able to overpower her. Once to the landfill and out of sight of the path, he grabs his knife and slits her throat. As she is bleeding out, he drinks some of her blood. Okay. Just wait. It gets worse. While he's busy with that mess, a bus full of villagers from a local factory arrives, so he lays down next to his victim and cuddles her to hide. It is frigid out, and the wind is brisk. As such, his hands get cold, so he warms them on her body. As soon as the bus leaves, he unclothes her, cuts her breasts into strips, removes her ovaries, separates her pelvis and hips, puts these into his backpack, and then just heads home. Well, it's time to go now. At home, he melts the fat so he can fry with it. As I mentioned before, he pickles some of the parts. He puts others through a meat grinder and makes dumplings, because that's normal. He grills the heart and kidneys, but they end up being really tough, so he slow cooks them in their own fat for a while to tenderize them before eating them. All the meat from her takes him a month to eat. He saves it all for himself and never shares it with anyone else, which is really nice for the poor folks that he might have fed it to. It is the first time he has ever consumed human flesh, and he has to force himself every time. But eventually he gets used to it and actually craves it. Days later, her body is discovered, or whatever's left, and the cops open an investigation. Unfortunately, the police are unable to identify Nikolai, so he continues just eating folks. Not exactly sure what goes on inside the mind of a cannibal, that's for sure. It's like an added layer of nuts on top of that deranged serial killer layer. So it's a 7-layer serial killer salad. Well, I mean, why eat people? Just, stop being nasty. Also, murder is bad. I wish I could say it was a one-and-done thing for Nikolai, but that's not at all true. Later that same year, 1979, between January, after the first murder, and August, he murders and cannibalizes 5 more people. Mid-August 1979, he accidentally shoots a fellow firefighter while drunk. He is arrested and sent to the Serbsky Center, or the Serbsky Institute, also known as the Serbsky State Scientific Center for Social and Forensic Psychiatry. Yikes. It is a psychiatric hospital and Russia's main center for forensic psychiatry. Sounds terrifying. A Russian psychiatric hospital? Nope. There he is diagnosed with schizophrenia. He is kept there for less than a year. After his release, he heads back to Uzanganash and commits 3 more murders and cannibalizations. It's not something you hear me say on a regular basis. Cannibalizations. Okay. At this point, his murder count is up to 9. It's this number 9 that leads to his undoing. What happens? Well, allow me to set the scene. Nikolai and his girlfriend, they live together. They invite some friends over for dinner. I'd like to have you for dinner. No, I'd like to have you for dinner. Through the course of the evening, somehow, Nikolai manages to lure one of the guests into a separate room. It's here that he kills them and then begins dismembering the body. When he and the guest take too long to return, his girlfriend and the others go looking for them, like a scavenger hunt. Marco, Polo. They finally open the right door, or wrong door, and find him on his knees, leaning over the body, dismembering him, the friend, with a knife and a hatchet, smeared in the victim's blood. The police are called, and when they arrive, they are so shocked and bewildered that Nikolai is able to escape. I wonder why he didn't run when his girlfriend and the others caught him. Maybe he thought they wouldn't call the cops. Don't worry, guys, I'm not going to eat you. Anyway, the police are in over their heads, clearly, and he is able to escape. He flees to the mountains completely naked. Why is he naked? Well, maybe to not get blood on his clothes while he's, harvesting his friend in the back bedroom. So even though there's a house full of guests that are witnesses, he decides that that's the opportune time to murder and eat someone else. Okay, what a nutcase. He flees to the mountains, naked and with a hatchet. So kind of like Rambo, but also not. He is tracked down and apprehended the very next day. December 19th, 1980. How did he not freeze to death that night? I don't know. Around a year later, he goes to trial. Being consistent with his previous diagnosis of schizophrenia, he is declared insane, found not guilty by reason of insanity, and remanded to a special treatment center where he spends the next 8 years or so. On August 29th, 1989, he is being transferred to another mental hospital when he manages to escape. Cue the Halloween music. I don't know what exactly happens, but he drives off in the car that he's being transported in. I guess he likely overpowers the driver, right? Then crashes the car, throws the guy out, and just drives off. I don't know. That's just my guess. I just don't understand why he's being transported in a car. I understand maybe not wanting to transport one mental hospital prisoner via a prison bus, but an ordinary car? How about a police car or some sort of precautions be taken? The levels of incompetence sometimes. The story is he wanders around the USSR for a long time, committing a series of murders in Moscow and Kazakhstan. He never goes back to his home village, since every time the hospital declares him cured and sends him home, which happens multiple times, he isn't well received. No surprise, as he murders and eats people's family members. He is successfully in the shadows at this point. Declared a fugitive, there are manhunts to find him. But no luck. Anonymous tips report sightings in and around Moscow, Kyrgyzstan, and Uzbekistan. All the while, he is hiding in the mountains of Kyrgyzstan for most of the 2 years, collecting medical plants and bartering with the locals for food. He realizes it is becoming harder and harder to hide, as there are people searching for him by foot, car, and hand glider. It is an all-out hunt to find him at this point, and he's not happy about it. So, he decides to get them off his scent. He reaches out to a friend and asks him to take a letter he had written and mail it from Moscow. This successfully diverts authorities' attention. Sorry, I've been mispronouncing that. So this successfully diverts authorities' attention from Kyrgyzstan to Moscow. This is how his letter ended. Quote, "Now I will return soon. There are a lot of beautiful women here. No one will notice their loss." Okay. Rumors quickly spread that he is in Moscow. The press goes berserk, and the citizens of Moscow freak out. Authorities push to eliminate panic by refuting the press's previous comment about him being spotted in the area. Eventually, he decides it's too much work to stay hidden from the authorities and having to barter for every meal. For some reason, he thinks he can commit a small crime and go to jail for that, and then not for all of the murders. Nuts much? Well, yes, he is. So with that, he makes his way to eastern Uzbekistan to a district-level city called Fergana and steals some sheep. Doesn't count them, he steals them. This is in April of 1991. He is arrested and claims to be Chinese. Because, what the hell, right? Why the hell not? They have no reason to doubt his ethnicity and throw him in Inciso, a temporary detention isolation facility. During his interrogations, he confesses to stealing the sheep, but is unable to answer questions around how a Chinese man got to the Soviet Union. His plan is crumbling. Due to this inconsistency in his story, or discrepancy, the authorities send a request to Moscow for assistance interrogating and investigating the suspect. A man by the name of Colonel Yuri Dubyagan, who just so happens to be a huge part of the effort to capture Nikolai, is ordered to aid the authorities in Fergana. It doesn't take him but a second to identify the sheep thief as the fugitive and murdering cannibal Metal Fang. The colonel immediately takes over the investigation, throws Nikolai in custody, and remands him to the psychiatric hospital in Kazakhstan. Since he has been declared cured multiple times in the past, he is hopeful the courts will agree and release him. Even though every single time he was considered cured and then released, Immediately, dismembered bodies with parts missing were found near where he was staying. Every time. Fat chance he's getting released again. Or slim chance. He will forever be incarcerated in a special psychiatric hospital in a village in southeastern Kazakhstan called Aktis. It sounds like a terrible place. Like haunt your nightmares bad. Kazakhstan used to be part of the USSR, so think Russian psychiatric hospital / penitentiary. Rumor has it this is the place where they send people who speak against the state, in a move called punitive psychiatry. No please. The clinic's doctors believe and say he is well behaved in the facility and could function in society or be observed in a regular hospital. As such, questions of discharge are not out of the picture. Yikes. Forensic psychologists and those who study serial killers disagree and believe he should be locked up forever. I agree with those guys. This is really one of those cases where you can, lock the door and lose the key. In September 2014, he is charged with a 10th murder. This is a murder he committed while on the run, on the lam, in 1990. In January 2016, rumors about his escape hit social media. No thank you, no please, right? Authorities confirm he is still locked up. They trace the rumors back to his home village. Some 21-year-old girl is responsible. She is arrested and eventually confesses. I guess there's no free speech there. I don't know how much time she gets, but the law says that she can get up to 5 years for lying about his escape. That's messed up. Punitive psychiatry, anyone? Well, that's creepy. If you enjoy this video, please remember to like it, share it, comment, and subscribe to this channel. Next week, we are going to learn all about Park Myung-sik, known as the Organ Harvester, a North Korean serial killer who was convicted of murdering at least 12 teenagers in 1990 in order to harvest and eat their livers to cure his cirrhosis. He is the only serial killer whose existence has been officially acknowledged by the North Korean government. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay safe.